Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. I suspect that the title of this might have drawn some new people just to look at and see what I might have to say. Uh, in the next couple of minutes, you'll know the answer to that question. But first, real quick, I just want to let everybody know, those that watch me all the time, there'll be a lot rambling going on after I do this first initial thing about the most influential woman in woodworking. Um, the thing about her influence and everything is she did it with such little participation in the whole woodworking arena. Uh, Other than she obviously had her own shop and she'd been doing what she did for over 15 years already when she wrote the book. And that is, we're talking about Lois Keener Ventura. And when she wrote this first book of hers, it was published in 2000. This is a republished of it. So that it's got a different looking cover on it than the original. But it was amazing about her is that if you look around at her past, you don't see any YouTube channel, any YouTube videos at all about her. You can't even find a news article where she's being interviewed or a TV show or anything. In fact, I've only seen one picture of her. She's very elusive. But yet her impact on the woodworking industry, woodworker arena overall, in my opinion, was huge in 2000. And I saw it firsthand because I was already a woodworker. And she changed it in two ways. First way was by making this book, she took and all of a sudden everybody saw a bandsaw differently. And as a result, I think there were a ton of bandsaws sold between 2000 and 2010. And I haven't seen any stats on that, but I suspect that's probably true. And she is the reason why, because her books sold a lot of books. And you could tell the influence was out there immediately. Because I can remember going to wood shows before and even after she published her book. And after, you started seeing everywhere in the craft shows and in the woodworking shows, all her books that she made in the first book, there were 11 of them, or 13 of them. And she did all of those, started popping up on wood shows all over the place, constantly. And I mean, a lot of them. Even now you see her influence of her boxes that she put in there because she has scaled drawings and everything of those, so you can follow hers. And a lot of people did do that and then put those boxes out there for sale. The same thing is that she also taught you something about the bandsaw that a lot of us never even realized we could do with a bandsaw. Up until that point, it basically was looked at, I thought, as a machine for resawing or doing a certain amount of scrolling capability. But resawing was the big thing that you had to do with it. Unless you had large pieces of lumber that you wanted to resaw, the bandsaw was not necessarily something that you would use in your shop a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. The Durestas of the world are out there that took that bandsaw and used it to its fullest extent. Maloof was a big bandsaw fan, and he did some crazy things with his bandsaw that would scare most people to death just to watch him do it. Same thing with Jimmy Duresta. But nobody really had any information out there about how to do those things with a bandsaw. So most people did not really know how to utilize or even start to try to utilize it until her book came along and people looked at that and said, I can make that easy. And next thing you know, everybody and their brother was making bandsaw boxes. And now, tons and tons of bandsaw box books. Have you noticed? Try to find one before 2000 when hers was published. I haven't found one yet. But I'm sure there's maybe one or two out there. But I haven't found them. And if there aren't very many. But boy, since 2000, there are a whole bunch of them. I'd say at least 100 different authors of bandsaw box books out there. So she really did change the woodworking industry a lot. She also changed how you have certain things, like if you wanted to make a quick gift, you'd have to glue up something together to make it. Now, I mean, like a regular box. Now, a lot of them would rather, if you have the capability, they make bandsaw boxes as gifts. It makes one of the best gifts you can make, because one thing that you can always bet on when you see a bandsaw box, it's handmade. And that's one of the big differences between making and having bandsaw boxes and regular boxes. Because, yes, somebody made the original box, but sometimes those boxes are actually made um, in bulk when they make them. Bandsaw boxes are hard to have that kind of methodology applied to them, because every piece, every box is different from each other. So, but her bringing all of this information, and the way she was so thorough in her book at teaching you to go from a slab of wood, rough lumber, and how to mill it down, laminate it, and build your blanks, and how to go through every process. She does all that in one book very, very well. And again, she gave you 13 great examples of it. In fact, the three small boxes, the single drawer boxes, the Wave, the Minnow, and there was one other, sorry, it slipped my mind. But those three little boxes are the easiest thing in the world to make. And I actually made a lot of boxes that would look very similar to that. And I never used her plans to make any of my boxes, but she still had an influence. And then I decided to take what I learned from her and make my own style and creation. Just like one of the big things that I love to make, and I've made tons of them, and that is to make my boxes out of 4x4 pieces of lumber. So you just take 4x4 lumber and you glue them both together to give you a big blank, or you can go more than that. But I liked using the 4x4 blocks, and this double block drawer set, single drawer unit, was something that I've made a ton of them. But again, I would never have been able to develop my own style if I didn't understand how to do the basic work of how to create a bandsaw box. So I do believe that she is by far the biggest influence in the woodworking industry since 2000, at least. She's probably been the most influential since 2000, because you see her work everywhere. So anyway, I don't know what you think. If you can refute any of the things that I've said about her, or about the bandsaw boxes or books in general, let me know. I'd love to learn it, because so far this is what I've kind of seen. But there was no such thing as a bandsaw box book before she came along, and now there's so many. That alone should tell you about where her influence, how influential she was. And it was amazing, because since then, she only wrote one more book after this one, and it was really a continuation of this book with more projects. But she really didn't do anything. She didn't do, as far as I know, she didn't go any on big book tours or any of that type of stuff. She does do art shows, and that's where she is known throughout the art shows. And I'm talking about the real upper echelon of art shows. Her work is, from my understanding, is bought from all over the world. So everything she sells is, I suspect, very expensive. Probably her cheapest box that she ever sold cost more than my cheapest one my most expensive one I ever made, I'd say. So, but anyway, I think she's an amazing woman, and I am really amazed that she has managed to keep herself so much in the background also in the process, rather than letting that fame pull her out into the open. So anyway, tell me what your thoughts are and who you think is the most influential woman. But something I've been thinking about, and I thought I have to talk about this. So there you go. In the very near future here, I think maybe my next video, I'm going to do a continuation of this. Also of this book, and not necessarily about the book itself, but about style, and about how to develop your own style, and some of the characteristics of her style. I can probably look at a box and tell you, if you set up 3 boxes and one of them was made by her, I could tell you which one was made by her. She has a definite style, and everything that she does that I've seen of all her work, she definitely has certain characteristics in all of them, if you think about it. So, but that is just one style. And I think that you could develop a lot of, that's the thing about bandsaw boxes. you can develop your own style and make just about any kind of bandsaw box style that you would want. So I tend to be a potpourri. You never know what style I make. They go anywhere from a closed box like this. This was the very first box I made. And this one, I broke the rules that she had showed me twice when I made this thing already. The first one was that I did different is I ran my grain this way on a box that really probably should be running this way. Most people would run it horizontal on the grain, but I ran mine vertical, and I did that because everything she did pretty well, other than the wind tree box style, everything was grain ran horizontal. So I decided to make this a little different. Also, there's no kerf line on any of my drawer openings where the bandsaw went in and cut that out. I glued it back together at that cut point, so you have to look hard to see it. And she always leaves that kerf, and you can follow her pattern on these boxes as to how she did the band cuts. And that's something else we'll talk about too, is planning your cuts. The more complicated the box is, the more cuts you're going to have to take. Like this box right here, we'll talk about this one. But let me ask you and see if you know. Looking at that box, can you tell me how many different bandsaw cuts she made? Had to stop, back the blade out, maybe turn it around and back the blade into the kerf and then come the other direction to make another cut. When you plan out your cuts on a bandsaw box, sometimes you got quite a few cuts if it's a very complicated box like this one. And I'm not talking about the outside cuts. I'm talking about just to cut out for the drawers that you have in there, or any inlays you do. So if you know how many this has, let me know. I already know, but it says in the book. You can go back and look at the blueprints that they have on these things, the little plans, because she has all the drawers drawn out to scale and has arrows to show the direction of the cuts and the number, so you know which one to do first and so on all her boxes. But that box is an extremely complicated box when you think about it, and you have to be well planned on that box in particular. But any box you do, you want to make sure you do plan that stuff. So we'll go over that stuff a little bit in the next video, I think, unless something distracts me. But anyway, you might think about it. I would love to hear your opinion about who you think is the most influential woman in woodworking. And don't tell me it's your mother, okay? We all have that. I'm talking about influenced all the woodworkers. So, yes, my mom was influential too. But here, give me a second. Annie wanted something. So, anyway, if you have any questions, comments, I'd love to read them. Love to hear from you. If you learned something here, you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know that I'm doing something right. Otherwise, most importantly, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done rambling. Thanks. We'll see you guys again very soon.